Hello, Mithril here once again, getting back to Mag Mammal 2, and it's time for the judge commentary on the last 3 stages we just played. So there wasn't any commentary for Twilight Lodge over there, so starting with 31st place, TheRetroDude's Cursor Curse. Snow Run Pyro. Man, this started off so good and adorable, and then it just dropped off. I love the cursor concept, and the first few screens do a really nice job of being all, yo, gimmick, and they're just hilarious in general. And then the level just kind of spirals down into just pasting down random ideas with the occasional appearance of the cursor. There's a random Voltman fight where the cursor just spams tellies, there's a random gravity flip section, there's a random sled section, and then the end is just some random gauntlet of mini-bosses that just has nothing to do with the cursor. The boss is okay, I guess, though the enemies can pile up really easily. It's really sad to just see a really neat concept go down the drain so quickly. I wish there was way more done with this concept. Joopy Hornet. That was an awesome gimmick. The delete thing at the beginning was especially cool, but it wasn't entirely obvious what you were supposed to do at first. The level itself was a nice set of challenges, and the boss at the end was really cool. The rounders were pretty annoying though. However, the graphics are extremely minimal, and the music doesn't loop properly. Angel. This level makes me so sad. I absolutely adore the premise and how the level starts. However, as soon as Voltman drops in, it feels like the level slowly but surely runs out of ideas. The entire charm from the start takes a backseat to mid-bosses, which were placed in such a way that they don't give much of a signal besides filler. The fight against the cursor was pretty cute, though it could have used a proper pattern. I'd like to see him use his right-click powers more. Man though, this level could have been so much more. Gariri. I really like the idea behind this one, but unfortunately it wasn't executed as well as it could have been. By that I mean the cursor enemy gimmick is interesting, but it doesn't really do anything except for the first screen and the 2 bosses. Speaking of which, the first boss is pretty annoying. Other than that, I think the amount of mini-bosses is too high, and most of the level just feels empty sometimes. Overall this isn't a bad stage, but it definitely could have been better. And A-Spark. This is an utter shame. Your level concept promised a Michelin star quality meal. Sure, the decoration in the place is shoddy, but everything sounds so interesting. In the end, it offered a tasty appetizer, followed by a burnt chewy steak with overcooked veg, but at least had the decency to end with a solid, if rather boring, pudding. And now I'm hungry. Let's get something clear. Your opening room was fantastic. Even though the introduction will likely kill the player the first time they see it, after that point they will understand the gimmick. And honestly, I say you still introduced that gimmick well, because while it will probably kill the player, it is very clear the player's death was still their fault. Curiosity kills the cat, as they say. And the level seems to continue the trend, with a nice little flair for spike placement, and even an interesting idea for a mid-stage robot master. There's some issues with the implementation, namely the boss room is far too small for the boss you used. And then promptly drops the ball. What happened to the rest of the stage? We just get utterly random dev kit gimmicks with no rhyme or reason to their existence. Most of them, like the Frostman's sled, aren't even justified in this stage's little universe. And what was up with the ending of that segment? And every single mini-boss felt like filler. I really wish I could see more things unique to the mouse cursor idea. You have an entire menu with the right click there. It would have been great to see some other actions. The stage ends before anything else interesting happens. The boss is okay, although there is a bit too much RNG and spam in the battle for my tastes. Disappointing stage, really. This could have been a contender had it followed through with its core concept. I kinda have to agree there. I was hoping for a lot more dealing with the cursor itself, making that the main adversary, but more often than not, it kind of felt like the cursor was just a supporting player, making certain fights harder by being there rather than just being itself the harder thing. Like it said, with the Voltman fight, all it did was spam tellies. That's the only purpose it had. I was kind of hoping for something more along the lines, I don't know if anybody's seen these old Flash animations called Animator versus Animation. I loved those animations so much, just kind of the concept of a creator's creation messing with them, and I love that idea. I really wanted to see more of that here. So, awesome concept, but definitely more could have been done with it. Next up we have 30th place, Big Fish's Cossack's Other Citadel. Snow Run Pyro. The feeling when you decide to make Imorms visible always to make them more fair, and then someone makes them invisible anyways. Very good design in general. The whole level has a nice difficulty curve, and each of its gimmicks are used in good setups, and then all combined in the end. I don't really have much to say about the level besides the fact that it's just really well designed. Strongest parts are definitely the auto-scroll parts. I adore the unorthodox usage of shield attackers here, and the giant chains of berries are hilarious. The room with berries and ladders is also one that I really like. It's just some simple but well-designed setups with a single enemy. Really solid level overall. I like it a lot. Joopy Hornet. Well, that level existed. It was like a mashup of the 4 Cossack stages, but it didn't really do anything more than that. It was a pretty boring level, to be honest. Also, in that auto-scrolling section, there are 2 shield attackers that are literally impossible to avoid without the flash stopper, and the last room scrolls because a stop scroll object is missing. Huh. Not sure if I remember that happening. I don't know if that was something fixed post-judging, or if it's just something I wasn't observant and didn't catch. Angel. I really like the start to this level. It presents all of its challenges one by one, and builds on top of them through mutation of the setups. Sadly, my enjoyment with this level pretty much stopped as I went into the auto-scroll sections. The first one is very easy and leaves a lot of room for interesting things that can be done with the enemies, even without making it too cramped. The second one can be rather unfair if you don't see the enemies coming in time. Also, where'd the snow go? Gariri. The stage is honestly mediocre. There's really nothing that stands out here, and there's a lot of problems. Regarding level design, I actually think the first half is okay, but the second half is just filled with unfair enemy placement everywhere, not to mention the rain, which just makes things even more difficult. Also, the music choice is fine, but the echo is irritating, and it doesn't even try to loop properly. And A-Spark. The biggest critique of your stage is a lack of challenge, and the first few rooms are a little meh in design. The MRM enemy does not get used very well here. But for using only some very basic gimmicks, this one worked. The tile set is put together fine, the enemy variety hits the best balance. Overall, this was quite good. It felt like an official Mega Man stage through and through, and that's what we like to see. Your standout room was the final one, but worth noting is the fact that you actually took conveyance into account. Everything got introduced, and introduced well, even if I was not aware of these gimmicks and enemies from previous games. I am, but let's get hypothetical. You introduced them in such a fashion that the player could get used to them. And then you used everything in that last room to the best way possible, even shield attackers. My word, you used shield attackers well. Good stuff, mate. Only things really that could have improved the stage without changing the concept is perhaps a better choice in music, and looping it correctly for a start, as it's a tad predictable, and maybe give it a bit more bite towards the end. One more harder room, and I think you would have nailed what you were going for. You also gave just enough of a hint that your stage was ending without making me anticipate a boss fight that would never come, so that is appreciated. Basically, this stage is, like I said, it's just kinda Cossack stages in review, more or less. Honestly, I do really like the music, though I do wish it had looped properly. I always loved Cossack 1 and 2, and I tend to feel like that song gets ignored a lot in favor of Cossack 3 and 4, which is still good, but I love Cossack 1 and 2. I wish that song got more love. The stage overall was pretty good, and again it's interesting to see the variance in opinions there of people who like auto-scroll and people who don't. But I do really appreciate how the shield attackers were used. That was kind of a neat touch, just kind of using them as more of a traffic jam obstacle than a true enemy. Nicely done. And finally we had 29th place, Gransveld Hakase Fortified Lab. Again, if I'm butchering that name, I am so sorry. Feel free to comment and let me know what I got wrong about pronouncing that, because I'm sure I probably did, and I do try to make an effort to get these things right. Snow and Pyro. If a Wily Fortress was compressed into one stage. Most of the level I like, and it really does feel like something you'd see in like a late NES era Wily Fortress, but there are 2 sections that really bring the level down for me. You can tell which ones I don't like because they both have Bladers and Apache Joes in them. It's very easy to get unfairly killed just because you didn't see the enemy coming, and either have the Bladers swoop down at hyperspeed and kill you, or have the Apache Joe bump into you with its building-sized hitbox. The Pooker section is especially bad with this because it's over a bottomless pit, so you don't have an opportunity to rescue yourself with Super Arrow or something. The rest of the level is fine though, but the shield attacker room made me cry because it's like the literal worst usage of shield attackers ever, and it gives me nightmares from bad fan games. The rest of the level is fine, though I don't think it's terribly interesting, besides maybe the Sparkman platform setups at the beginning. It's an okay level. Oh, by the way, this level looks amazing, especially because this has no custom assets, so serious props for that. Joopy Hornet. The first half of the stage was fine and posed a nice challenge, but the second half, oh man, that part was difficult without weapons. Apache Joe's Bladers and the Cloud Things from Flame Man stage is a really bad combo. The vertical section has some really tight jumps, and it's hard to get through without falling down, especially with all the enemies around. Angel. It's like a meeting of many of my least favorite enemies, Joy. Bustering this level is absolute heck, but going through it with special weapons is pretty fun. I kinda wish the requirement of using weapons was indicated in any way, such as a jewel satellite block before the water section. That section with only a buster is a spaghetti fest. I like that term. But it's very much fine as is. Some enemies and jumps I don't really agree with in this stage, but otherwise this stage is pretty well made. And then it ends. I wish it utilized the exploding blocks that it introduced early on in more scenarios. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that could have been done here with them. As it stands though, nice level that requires some thinking. Gariri. this level is just okay for me. I don't think there's much here that is particularly offensive to game design, except maybe the placement of the bladers in the level, but there's nothing that makes me want to have a lot of fun here. I think the choice of assets was pretty cool, but aside from that, there's little interesting here. And Ace Spark. Boss corridor, no boss, no nothing, complete anticlimax. Why? This is a level with more style than substance, and most of that style was pre-made assets, but that's fine, the assets chosen work well together. You have a very good eye for making the stage visually interesting. I like that there was variety in gimmicks, but it does have issues. The segment with the Pooker is infuriating because it's combined with enemies that should never be combined with small moving platforms. Combining it with Junk Drop, pretty cool idea. With lyrics, also good. With bladers, and with Apache Joe, what? Special mention goes to that one blader, which is too high for you to hit with most weapons, so you're almost always going to have it ram head first into you and knock you to your doom. This bit needed rethinking. The rest of the level is fine. You do have a good eye for graphics, though, so hopefully you can get original assets to work with in the future. Thinking about it, dear gods, that Pooker section... I am so glad I had the Met helmet. I cannot imagine doing that section without it. Yeah, those particular enemies used in that scenario, with such a tiny platform that you're on and no way to save yourself, that's a thing. That is definitely a thing. I would have even taken if there was a spike wall at the bottom of it that you had invincibility frames to save yourself and try and jump back on the Pooker, but just a bottomless pit, that was kind of a thing. I also seriously feel like the bladers were extra fast in that level. I don't know if I'm just making that up, but they really did feel super fast. But anyway, that's where we're going to end it for now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the series so far, and I shall see you again next time. Until then, fare thee well.